guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla, and today I wanted to do a book review on a book I recently finished called, what is it called? Called My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. So this is a recent book that I think it came out this year. It's really good. Let me look it up on the GOODREADS. Oh, and also, if my hair looks crazy, I apologize. It's gonna look crazy because I, was at work all day, and then I was at my mom's for a few hours and I had it up in a bun, and now I just put it down, and if it looks crazy, I'm sorry. Also, if you hear buzzing or see my hair moving, I have a fan on me because it's really hot in here, and I love fans. So I'm gonna try and put music over this, like just to maybe drown it out. I hope it's not annoying, the sound of the fan, but I need it on me because I'm gonna die. My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing was published this year. It came out March 26th of 2019, and I just recently started it, and I think I read it in like 3 or 4 days, which is pretty fast, considering, I'm busy. Everyone's busy. Everyone has a busy life, so I'm not reading every second of my free time. I wish I could, but but I read it, and I really liked it. Really liked it. Let me get my notes home. I got my reading journal, my reading bullet journal, and I did take some notes on it. My Lovely Wife is a thriller. I think that's what it's officially called, is a thriller. And as soon as I heard what it was about, I was immediately hooked. Like, I immediately wanted to read it because they said something about it being like Dexter and Mrs. Smith together, like the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith together. And I was like, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that was a good movie, but my thing that got me was the Dexter thing, because I'm obsessed with Dexter, the TV show, and anything like that is just fascinating to me. So when I read the back of it, I was like, oh my god, yes, this is something I want to read. And me and my sister, actually, we buddy read it, and she read it before me. She got to it way faster than I did, and then I read it, and then we talked about it. Oh my gosh, it was so good. So let me read you the synopsis. Well, let me see if I can just kind of, yeah, I'm going to just kind of summarize it myself. So, because I don't know. But, okay, so My Lovely Wife, it takes place in modern times. It's about a husband and wife, and they have 2 children. They live in the suburbs. They're like middle class, upper middle class. She's a realtor, he's a tennis coach or tennis trainer, and he teaches tennis, he gives tennis lessons. So, that's what it's about. But like what the back says is something like a lot of people do different things to keep their marriages spicy, and theirs just happens to be that they like to murder. And you're just like, what? So that's pretty much what it's about. And I've heard it explained in different ways. Like, one person said that, like, oh, the wife likes to murder, so the husband will get victims for her. And then there was another one where it's like they got bored, so they decided to start killing people. And those are, to me, a little inaccurate, in my opinion. But anyways, so it's a really, really, really good book. I was hooked right away. This author definitely has her own voice, very unique voice. It hooked me, like, instantly. Oh my gosh. And I listened to the audiobook. That's another thing, is like, I don't think I've ever done that. I've listened to audiobooks, but I only listen to audiobooks that I've already read before. So it's kind of like I think I listened to Pride and Prejudice on audiobook just because, I've read Pride and Prejudice a few times, and just to hear it, it was kind of like I was at work listening to it. So because I always thought that, like, audiobooks wouldn't be for me because I would lose my train of thought, and then I'd get lost and not know where I was, and like, I thought that it wasn't going to work for me. But this was the first time, well, because I have Scribd, and I'll link Scribd down below. It's this website where you pay $8.99 a month, and you have access to all of these books, and you have access to a lot of books, like a lot of popular books, new releases, all kinds of good stuff. And they have a large selection of audiobooks and print. Sometimes they have, or print, ebook. Sometimes they have both, so you can pick and choose, and sometimes they only have one or the other. So in this case, I was like, I didn't own My Lovely Wife, so I was like, oh, let me see if it's on Scribd. And so I looked, and they didn't have an ebook of it, but they did have the audiobook. And I was at a point where I wanted to read it so bad, and I was like, well, I'll listen to the audiobook. So I started listening to the audiobook, and I was hooked. I mean, the audiobook was amazing. It was so cool. It was really well done. So I'm going to kind of tell you like my rating for it. So My Lovely Wife, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I tend to reserve my 5 out of 5 stars for books that I just love, you know, and just love and adore. And I couldn't really say that it was a really good book though, like really good. It's up there. I enjoyed every second of it. It was great. It was great. So I highly recommend it if you like thrillers, anything with like true crime, serial killers. It's real interesting. It's a very interesting read. So I definitely recommend it. So from here on out, there's going to be spoilers and stuff because I'm going to talk about the book and things I thought about it and all this stuff. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, you should probably stop watching now. But I'm just going to start talking about the book. So I did take some notes on it. I'm trying to do that more so that I can like keep track of what I think of the book. So this book was never boring. It was a page turner from the start. And it's kind of interesting because it's in first person, and it's all from the husband's point of view. So that's kind of cool. That was kind of interesting. It was written by a female author, but it was like from a male's point of view, which was really, really interesting. I loved it. I thought it was really cool. I tend to like books that have one point of view, you know, where it's just the whole book is from one person's point of view, or the whole book is third person. You know what I mean? It kind of makes me a little crazy when there's multiple point of views and like they constantly switch and stuff. That's kind of hard for me to keep up with. It's just something I'm not that crazy about. If it's done right, it's great, but you know. So that's one thing I liked about this book, was that it was all told from the husband's point of view. Another thing was, I kept thinking, like, as the book progressed, I kept thinking like, oh my gosh, this is what's going to happen next. Like, you could almost feel like the book was going down a certain road, and you almost knew like, okay, well this is so going to happen next, right? So yeah, so I kept thinking that the book was going to go in one direction, and then it would completely surprise me and go in a whole nother direction. Things I thought for sure were going to happen didn't happen. Other things I did not even think of would happen. It was really cool. So I loved that it kept me guessing, and even there were so many times I thought I knew. Like, I almost got a little disappointed. I'm like, oh, this is kind of, I kept thinking that, oh, you know, I'm going to figure it out. And I never did. There were so many times where I was so surprised. So I loved that about the book. It kept it really enjoyable. There are a few things I want to talk about. One of the things that I noticed while reading this book, and then like afterward when I was thinking about it, I noticed that the book touches on a lot of subjects, a lot of very interesting subjects, controversial subjects, ones that have differing opinions, ones that are really relevant, and it did it in a way that didn't feel jam-packed or out of place. It all felt very much organic to the story, but it was really interesting. So what I loved about the book is that there's a lot to it. So it's not just your run-of-the-mill story, but there's these talking points, like things that happen in the book or things that are discussed in the book. It's one of those things where, like, if you're reading this for like a book club, it's one of those where you guys could talk for hours and argue and be like, well, I think this should have happened, or I think this was crazy, you know, like, I can't believe this happened, I can't believe this is an issue, like, just all kinds of stuff. And so I thought that was really cool. So it's one of those books that not only can you talk about a lot and debate over, but it also, like, it doesn't answer all of your questions, you know? So it keeps you wondering. It's one of those books that I've wondered about, like, just different things that happened in the book, or different things you don't find out. That's another thing I love about the book, is not all the questions are answered. And that might seem irritating because there are some big questions when you're reading a book you want answered. They answer all the relevant ones, all of the ones that need to be answered. Like, when you're finished with the book, you feel satisfied. There is a satisfaction, there is an ending to the book. But there are little details, little things that you're just, God, you're wondering. And you wonder, like, what really happened, or why did this happen, you know, things that weren't explained. So I love stuff like that because it keeps you thinking and guessing and theorizing and stuff, so that's cool. So yeah, some of the really important topics that this book covered was very obvious ones, like murder, marriage, having children, and especially like marriage and children and the whole family life in this day and age. Also, another one that I felt was really big in the book was the media. So it's very interesting how this relationship between the media, the public, the police, and true crime. A lot of times, you know, true crime gets sensationalized and bad things happen because of that. Like, people start lying about things, or things get taken out of context, rumors start. It's not necessarily good for the actual investigation, but sometimes they use me. Like, we all know the media and the good and the bad with it. So this book definitely touches on that, and I thought that was really interesting. It's very relevant. Also, the marriage thing and like raising kids and stuff, like it was very relatable. I think that was another interesting thing, was that this book was very relatable, which made it really, really freaky. My sister she has a fiance, so she's gonna be married. She has children, she has her own house, they both have jobs, all this stuff. So it's very similar to the book. And she read it and she said that it made her so paranoid. This book made her so paranoid that she started freaking out, like didn't want to be alone anywhere, and just felt like her next door neighbor could be a serial killer and anything could happen. So that's another thing, is this book is terrifying. It makes you realize that you are not as safe as you think you are, even in, you know, really nice neighborhoods. So she became really paranoid about that. I personally, I don't have kids, I'm not married, but I have a long-term relationship, and we're basically like we're married. We have a house together and we have dogs and stuff like that. So I mean, it's one of those things where like you can kind of easily identify with their situation, which makes it all the scarier. So yeah, so the book did touch on a lot of interesting topics. One thing that, so I guess I'm going to kind of just tell you a little bit about the book, about like what happened and stuff. So the book starts out with the husband. Obviously, the husband he's our narrator. And it starts out with him pretending like he's deaf. He's like pretending like he's deaf. He's hitting on this woman at a bar, I think, or a restaurant or something. And he goes home with her and they sleep together and he leaves. And in the beginning I thought like, oh, this is his wife, right? And it's not. He goes home and then you meet like his wife, Millicent, his two children, Rory and Jenna. And I think one is like 13, one's 14 or something like that. Or 14 or 15, 14, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people describe this book in a way that to me is a little misleading and incorrect. Some people say that, like I said in the beginning of this video, that they kill because they got bored, they kill because, I don't know. It's misleading because that's not why they killed. Like what was the other thing that they said? So like one person said like, okay, so he's married to a woman who likes to kill, so he goes out and finds people for her to kill. I feel like that's incorrect. And then some people say that, like, oh, it's because they're bored, and then that's why they decided to kill. That's incorrect. This book is very strange. So what really happened is that they fell into this. This wasn't something that they got bored one day and then they decided to just start killing people. No, that's not what happened. It's not like she always wanted to kill. Okay, it's a little complicated. But for the most part, this is, I'll clarify in the end, but they fall into this, okay? So you find out as you're reading that, because there's a lot of back and forth. So like, it's a progressive story, but there are some flashbacks, and the husband is kind of describing like how they got to where they got and how certain things happened. Well, you know, they met, they got married, they had children, everything's fine, no killing, no one's killing anybody, and everything's fine. Then one day, something really crazy happens. So he knows that Millicent, that's his wife, she used to have a sister, and he always knew that it was like a real sore subject with her, and that it was something she never liked to talk about. She did talk about it eventually to him, but saying things like, when they were kids, like, she was really mean, she was very cruel, and she would do things like she would cut her sister, she would cut Millicent, and just be very cruel, and everyone thought that it was everyone always thought they were accidents, but she knew that, like, her sister was evil. And then one day they got in a car crash, and she makes her husband believe that her sister had died. So she kind of, like, she doesn't outright say it, and he doesn't outright ask, but it's one of those things where she leads him down that road to think that her sister's dead and been dead all these years. Well, one day, you know, the kids are like 8 or 9 or something, I don't know. One day, Millicent freaks out. She gets a phone call, she freaks out. He finds out, the husband finds out, that her sister is alive and well, and that she's been in a mental institution for years, ever since they were kids, and she's now being released. And so the Millicent is freaking out, flipping out, she's terrified, she doesn't want anything to do with her sister and stuff like that. So it's a shock to him that, number one, she's alive, and number two, that she's, you know, she's free now. So he starts to notice, and she tells him too, that they start seeing the sister everywhere. I can't remember what the sister's name is. Holly. That's what it was. So they keep saying, so her sister, Millicent's sister's name is Holly, and once she's free, they start seeing her everywhere. And at the grocery store, standing everywhere, like, she's being stalked. Like, it's almost like she's stalking Millicent, and Millicent is terrified, right? So then one day Millicent is at home, or she comes home, and she sees that Holly is in the house. She's sitting on a couch, she's in the house, right? And so the husband, you know, comes in, like, the wife, Millicent, is like, come home, 911, you know, you have to come home. He goes home, he tries to tell her, like, you need to leave, stuff like that, and Holly is kind of, doesn't want to leave and all this stuff. And then she starts coming towards Millicent, and the husband thinks that she's gonna hurt Millicent, and so he kind of steps in front, and he ends up hitting Holly on the head with something and kills her. He ends up killing her. So this was a complete accident. It was all self-defense, you know. Before he could even think what to do, he was gonna call the cops and, you know, whatever. The wife was like giving him instructions. She was like, go get the tarp, this and that. And so they covered up her body. They, you know, buried it or whatever they did with it. I can't remember what they did with it. But they got rid of the body. They didn't tell anybody, okay? This was just like a secret. And then, like, they move on with their life. And then a year later, this woman stops by the house. And she talks to the husband. And she's basically, apparently, she's a friend of Holly's. And she said that she's been looking for her. She thought it was weird that Holly just all of a sudden disappeared. I think Holly told her friend, this woman, a little bit about the situation or something like that. So this friend, she knows that they did something to Holly, and so she went to this house, she's talking to the husband, and she's trying to blackmail him. like give her so much money, and you know, she won't tell the authorities and this and that. And as we all know with blackmail, I mean, that doesn't last, you know, like they'll keep blackmailing you. So they decide that, and like they tried everything to get her to leave and stuff, and she wouldn't leave. Like she was saying like, no, you're gonna give me money or I'm gonna talk. And so he does the same thing to Millicent. He texts her and he's like, 911, come home. You know, she comes home. Like they instantly knew that they were gonna have to kill her to cover up what their first killing, right? So again, something happens. I think Millicent hits her over the head, and then they kill her too, right? So they fell into this, right? They killed two people they did not really mean to. The second one, yes. And then a year after that is when they started getting the idea to actually purposefully kill somebody. They were at like a New Year's Eve party, and they were looking at everybody, and they were to themselves, they were just like, you know, whispering to themselves, like kind of playing and being like, oh, like hunting, you know, like looking at women and being like, oh, how about her? No, she wouldn't be good. How about her? You know, like they were playing, and it slowly started entering into their head. And so it was kind of like this buildup, and it was one of those things that they realized that they really enjoyed, because when they killed Holly, when they killed that other woman, her friend, they noticed that not only did it give them like a rush of adrenaline and excitement because of what's happening and stuff, but it was something that they shared, and it was something that was just their own. It was like a secret. It made them feel really connected to each other, and they liked that. They liked that feeling. And so that's kind of why they fell into it. This is what you think, right? This is kind of the story. And so after that, they do it on purpose. So to my knowledge, they had only done it to one other woman. Like after the two that were kind of accidents / they didn't really try to murder these people, then there was one that they did. They hunted. He hunted. He like scoped out. He would follow and stalk. It's very BTK, very, oh, it was so creepy. And he enjoyed it, and he wooed them and stuff like that. And apparently, oh my God, it's just so much. There's so much to this book. I can't say everything because there's just so much to it. It is a little strange because it's disjointed. Like their murdering is not as together as you would think. So what it is that like the husband, he's the one that stalks, finds somebody, talks to them, interacts with them, and he's the one that basically catches the victim. And then their idea is that they would kill that person together. And then at one point they were about to do that. They were like in a swamp, because they live in Florida. They were like in a swamp area. They were about to kill this woman together that they'd been hunting and all this stuff. But an emergency happens with one of their kids, and one of them has to go like pick up the kid. So it was him. He was like, you know what, you do this. He could kind of tell that she enjoyed it a little bit more than he did, I think. And so he went and dealt with the daughter or whatever, and, you know, the wife said it was taken care of, you know, so he thinks that she killed her, dumped her in the swamp, all good. A year goes by, and it comes out that that woman, I think her name was Lindsay, she was found in an abandoned motel, abandoned something, and it had showed that she had died recently. And this is a year later, and when he sees the news, he's like, what? And he like talks to his wife, and apparently his wife never killed Lindsay. She kept her in a abandoned, like whatever, abandoned motel or whatever. She kept her there, and she tortured her for a year. And it's real complicated. Things get so complicated. It's a lot, okay? And the wonderful thing too is the pacing of this book. Oh my gosh, Samantha Downing is so good at cliffhangers at the end of chapters, only giving you like you consistently get tidbits of information, but they're so teasing, and I can't tell you how many times I was like, like my mouth dropped, I was gasping, I was yelling at my book. I mean, this book made me physically react so many times. it surprised me so many times. There were times where I was just like, oh my God, no, you gotta be, nope, are you kidding? You know, just crazy things in it. So there's a lot to this book. There's a lot of twists and turns. It would take me forever just to describe what happened, you know, and that's not even going into detail, okay? So please go out and read it. It's so good. But anyways, so yeah, that's why I don't think that saying like they got bored and decided to start killing, it's not really accurate. You know, they fell into it. It was an accident. They fell into it, you know, whatever. But that's not really accurate either. So one thing I didn't like about the book was the ending. Kind of. So the ending, it was very, the pacing was great. The build-up was great. Everything about it was so great. The ending to me was a bit anticlimactic. I felt like it was leading somewhere huge. There were so many huge revelations throughout the book, and I kind of expected the ending to kind of be a bang, right? And I mean, something dramatic happened, and it did have an interesting ending, but it didn't feel, I felt a little underwhelmed when I found out like how it ended. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, because I mean, like, I don't know what I was expecting. I just was expecting to get that same reaction of, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, you know? And that didn't really happen. It kind of just, I was kind of confused in the ending and just, I don't know. The thing is that the wife basically frames the husband in the end, okay? It's a lot to get there, but the wife basically frames him. She does all this killing. She frames him, and the cops are after him, and they think it's him, right? So the very ending, he's on the run and stuff. He goes back to the house, and he's talking to her. I think he was gonna kill her because she was poisoning one of their children. And he's very, very, I mean, he loves his children, but he is also enjoys, I mean, he never actually really kills any of the women, but he's involved. He enjoyed the stalking. I mean, he kind of did. He didn't enjoy it as much as Millicent did, but he enjoyed some of that real fucked up. He didn't care that much that these women were dying, you know? So, but he cares about his children, and he finds out that Millicent has been poisoning one of them, and he just thinks like, no, he's got to do something so that she doesn't stay with the children because his children will be in danger. So he goes to her, and I think he's planning on killing her. It's the middle of the night. She was gonna, I don't know what she was gonna do. I think she was gonna kill him and say it was self-defense. Well, they're talking, and he's like asking like, why are you doing this? Why are you framing me? This and that, and all this stuff. The kids wake up, they come to the room, they overhear some conversations, you know, it gets crazy. The wife is telling the kids like, don't believe him, and then he's telling the kids, no, don't believe her, you know, so it's real confusing. And then something happens, there's a scuffle, and it ends up being that the daughter ends up stabbing the mom, kind of accidentally, kind of in self-defense, and the mom ends up dying. Well, and then the husband, you know, gives the final blow and all this stuff. She dies. So then in the end, it's all nicely, neatly wrapped up in a nice little bow, where it's really like quickly explained that, like, you know, the cops, after everything, and the kids explained to the cops, they figured out that she was framing him, that it really was her, that he didn't have anything to do with it, and that there was some evidence too that kind of proved that the evidence she planted was not good. It was not, I don't know. So it was really neatly, nicely wrapped up, and I felt like that was a little too convenient because I feel like, I don't know, I felt rushed. I felt like there would have been a little bit more of a struggle proving that he was not the killer, especially because she made it so that everyone believed it. I don't know. I was surprised at how quickly, you know, his name was cleared and whatever. And then the ending, you know, after everything's cleared and stuff, he takes his 2 children and they move to Scotland and they live in Scotland. So then there's the epilogue. And that is what I really loved. So technically that's like the ending, the very, very ending. Now that I think was done very well, and I'll tell you why. So an interesting thing about this book, a little thing about it, is that, like I said in the beginning, the husband has this kind of ruse that he's come up with. In order to kind of interact with their victims and choose them, he pretends that he is this deaf man. He pretends that he's deaf because it makes them feel a little safer, and it gives them a false sense of security to be around a deaf man. It's very similar to Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy pretended that he was like, his arm was in a cast, he pretended like he was hurt to seem less threatening. And the same thing with deaf. For some reason, when you see a deaf person, you think that they're less threatening. And he knew that, so he pretended like he was deaf. And he would tell them that his name was Tobias. Like, this was a thing that him and his wife came up with, because Tobias, it's one of those names that is weird enough to be memorable, but not too weird that you're just like, what? That's a crazy name. That's his thing, right? So every time he stalks and he starts meeting potential victims, he always pretends that he is Tobias and stuff. And then he says this one memory that he has where when him and Millicent were coming up with this character, this persona that he was going to use, they were stuck between two names. Like, should he be called Tobias or Quentin? You know, he kind of liked Quentin, she really liked Tobias, and they did something, and Tobias it was, you know, so that's why it was Tobias. So there are times throughout the book where he's using this. He interacts with potential victims or victims, and he's pretending to be Tobias, right? Well, in the ending, one thing that I never realized until someone said it in a review of the book, you never know what the husband's name is. And it's one of those things where, like, someone said it, and I was like, what? And I was like, oh, that's true. And you know that was done on purpose. So you never know what the husband's name is. You know, it never comes up. Like, anytime it's all first person, we know everybody else's name. We know Millicent, Andy, Rory, Jenna. Like, everybody has a name. And anytime anyone interacts with the husband, they always say dad, you know, like dad this, dad that, or someone's just talking to them, they don't say his name, and so you never know what his real name is. So that instantly makes you like, whoa, you know, it makes you feel like you don't really know him. And then you realize, like, he is a classic unreliable narrator. That's one of the really cool things about first person, is that a lot of times, maybe not always, but they can be unreliable narrators, right? And he definitely is one, because of the fact that in the book he even admits that he plays personas, he lies, obviously, because he has to hide that he's, you know, helped murder and stuff like that. So you know he lies, you know he impersonates, and you know that he enjoys the hunt. So there's a part of him that is a murderer, because he enjoys it. It doesn't bother him to know that someone's going to die. It's actually kind of exciting. And he might not necessarily want to get his fingers dirty, but he likes the idea of it. He's perfectly fine with ending someone's life. It just so happens that it's just like the way circumstances fell, that he never actually, you know, pulled the trigger or stabbed or whatever it is. So that's why he kind of seems so throughout the book, you start taking his side, because you realize that that Millicent is framing him, and you're just like, oh my god, you're so upset because you know it's really her, and you kind of forget that he is not completely innocent. And I don't even know why. He even says it a few times throughout the book, like, oh, I know I'm not that innocent and stuff like that. Like, so it's not like you forget, but you kind of do. You end up rooting for him. And if you step back and think like, whoa, I really shouldn't be rooting for, he's a murderer too. I mean, if you're involved as much as he was in planning and all this stuff, you're a murderer too. Just because you didn't pull the trigger doesn't mean shit. So he's a murderer too, just not with as dirty hands. And so that was weird, you know? And so at the ending, I was like, well, you know, he's better than Millicent, you know. I kept thinking, like, he really only got into this because of Millicent, and it kind of was for her. Not completely, but I could kind of picture that once all this was over and once Millicent was dead and everything like that, like, they would just go have a normal life. You know, no more killing, none of that bullshit, because it was hell. Like, he almost had his life thrown away. But then the ending and the epilogue is so good. So, like I said, in the ending, so it's snowing, they're in Scotland, it's a year later, I think it's probably around the holidays. So it's a year after all of this happened, and Millicent died and everything. And the husband, don't know his name, and I never realized it until after I finished the book, but he ends up like dropping his kids off at school, and he's like running errands and stuff like that. And then he sees like a pub or something, and he decides to stop in, right? So he stops in, and this was something he did a lot when he was hunting. He would meet women at bars, you know, that's kind of what he did. So it's kind of a thing that's familiar to him. So he goes into this pub, sits down, has a beer. And then there's this pretty woman that's sitting near him or next to him. And I'm thinking, like, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, like, oh, like, he's going to meet someone nice, or maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't know how it's going to end, right? Then he takes out his fucking phone, types, "Hi, it's nice to meet you. My name is Quentin." And then the book ends, and he passes her the phone. And this is what he did when he was hunting. He would do that. That's how he communicated, because he's deaf, right? He would type on his phone, "My name is Tobias, nice to meet you," and he would show them the phone, and that's how they communicate. And he fucking does this in Scotland, and the book ends. And I was like, oh, so good. Such a good ending. So juicy. Oh, it took me by surprise. I honestly did not expect that, because I don't know, I really thought that he kind of learned his lesson, and that killing wasn't as fun to do by himself. It felt like more like a group activity for him. That's what I kind of pictured. But then him doing that, I was just like, oh, you know, it's so sinister. I loved it. I thought it was a perfect ending. Now that ending, the very, very ending, perfect. It was a cherry on top of the sundae. It was so good. I loved it. Oh, it was so good, because it makes you think so many things, like, he's still gonna do it. He's still bad. He's gonna kill, right? He's gonna take up where they left off and just do it on his own. That's a possibility. We don't know. But also, too, it's also possible that he'll just stalk, because that's something that he really enjoyed. He enjoyed it so much. Like, he got off on it. So he's a little messed up in the head. He liked watching women, picking a woman, learning all their habits, watching them, you know, the interactions. Honestly, most serial killers love that. And he loved it. And so part of me is like, well, it's possible that he'll keep doing that for fun. Maybe he won't ever take it as far as murder, but he'll definitely do the stalking part, because he loves that. But then I thought, even if that's true, he'll eventually murder, because you can't do stuff like that and only do that. It's always an escalation. It's always a snowball effect. You'll always go a little bit farther each time, and then before you know it, you're killing. That's kind of how it happens sometimes. So, oh, it was juicy though. I thought it was perfect, because I didn't want him to get completely off scot-free, because he's fucked up too. He's not much better than Millicent, if at all. So yeah, it was crazy. Oh my god, and there's so much else to the book. All these other different, there's so much to it. Like, I could keep going on and on and on. But it's a great book. It is so thrilling and scary and unexpected and so enjoyable, terrifying. And it's one of those books that I feel like you could talk a lot. Like, I feel like me and my sister, we could just talk and talk and talk and talk about it. So it's so good. So I highly recommend it. I loved it so much. So yeah, let me know if you read this book, what you thought about it, any theories you have, anything at all, anything that stuck out to you, because these are just a few things that kind of stuck out to me. I could probably go on and on. But yeah, so let me know, because I love talking about stuff like this. So talk about this, and if you have any other books that are similar to this, or maybe kind of made you feel like this, where there was so many twists and turns and you're just like, oh my god, let me know, because I'm always looking for that. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe if you liked the video and you want to see more, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. My hair's gonna be blowing in the wind. Oh, I need to put my timer on. I hope my hair looks okay. Well, let's just dive on in, shall we? But I want to do a review on it. Did I push? No, I didn't. I'm fine. I feel like I have something in my teeth.